The Lord Jesus spoke about the difference between mercy and obedience, sacrifice. And there was a very famous happening that happened with the Lord Jesus. Everything he did was famous. But he and his followers were walking through a field. And Jesus had been in the temple and he had cured a man. And I think this got people upset because you can't go around curing a guy on the Sabbath. What are you doing curing a guy on the Sabbath? And as they're walking through the field, some of his followers were picking heads of grain and eating them. And some Pharisees were outraged. How dare you? Your followers are eating. They're working on the Sabbath. How dare you do this? And Jesus talked about a couple of things. He talked about a case where King David, before he became king, he was going to be king, but he was being chased down by Saul, the existing king. And he went and ate the temple bread. And that outraged the Pharisees more. Are you comparing yourself to David? Of course, the Lord Jesus was comparing himself to what he was and is the Son of Man. But he also said, if you understood that my Father requires mercy, not sacrifice, you would not be saying these things. I'm paraphrasing. See, his followers were hungry. They needed to eat. The legalism of the Pharisees had become so utterly ridiculous. These are the same people who would scream at Jesus for curing a guy on the Sabbath. And as Jesus pointed out in the temple, which among you, if you had a donkey fall into a hole or even your neighbor's donkey, wouldn't go help get the donkey out on the Sabbath lest the donkey die, but you'll say this to the Son of Man? There's something about people who get into bureaucracies. What do? They bureaucrat. They become so mission-driven and so tunnel-eyed that when there's a massive change or indeed a catastrophe, sometimes the barbarism of bureaucracies shine. This has happened in North Carolina. It has to do with tiny houses versus tents. We'll talk about this in a second. When Jesus was allowing his followers to do a crazy thing like eat, it's really interesting. He simply said, they're feeding themselves. If you think this is work to pick a head of grain and you don't want this mercy, then what sacrifice do you actually want? Just to stay hungry all the time? This is a guy who fasted. It's also fascinating when I talk about Jesus and then talk about a brand we work with, I get these criticisms. Someone that said the other day, why do you need Bioptimizers when you can rely on Jesus? Well, Bioptimizers is made using the common blessings that God gave us. The company takes products like magnesium, takes things like protein and makes whey protein, takes things like prebiotics and probiotics and creates them so that we can use them to better ourselves and our body to care for the temple. I can't remember a time in the Bible where Jesus said, yeah, but don't take any herbs or anything to help your body work better. He never said that. I find it fascinating that people so hate the Lord or me that they want to say, hey, talking about your faith in conjunction with a company you work with is bizarre or it's hypocritical. Here's the deal about Bioptimizers. Matt and Wade know what it is to destroy their bodies. They destroyed their bodies. They were world-class bodybuilders. Bulk cut, bulk cut. They created Bioptimizers to help people not have that same fate because a lot of things can destroy our bodies, like long work, caffeine, the hours we live. They've done something at Bioptimizers this month, which I've never seen them do. The entire site is 25% off. Prebiotics, probiotics, sleep breakthrough, magnesium breakthrough for quality sleep and relaxation, masszymes to help you produce 1,200% more amino acids in your bodies, which are in fact the building block of proteins which build and churn muscle. Go to bioptimizers.com/Todd. Use promo code Todd to get 25% off everything there, including the educational materials, the books, as I said, the sleep breakthrough products. And when you use code word Todd, you qualify for $100 in free gifts as well. All they've done is taken the common blessings God gave us and put them in forms that help us keep the temple clear. Bioptimizers.com/Todd. Use promo code Todd. We learned so much about bureaucratic organizations during times of catastrophes. There were some people who decided to supply some tiny homes. You know, the sort of tiny houses that are on the streets of San Francisco and Seattle and Los Angeles and Minneapolis and Austin that homeless people are allowed to live in and become in them street people. There's a difference between being homeless and liking living on the street. When you've got the ability to live in a tiny house and continue to take drugs and traffic and be trafficked, why change? But when it comes to citizens who've been made homeless by Hurricane Helene, the bureaucrats in North Carolina apparently did something very different.
And all these groups are coming down here, and it's a nice thought. Yeah. And they're building these tiny homes that are that don't have to be inspected, so it's a shed with an outlet.
Well, they do have to be inspected. We're finding that out. And in fact, we had a person to donate 100 of them down in Barnardsville, and we got 25 of them put up, for people to live in, and which was better than the dirt.
Well, of course.
And so they were living in them, and the county comes in and says they won't pass inspection. You can't do it.
Yeah.
So we got 75 of them sitting down there that won't, that we can't do nothing with.
And we know I know like volunteers that have been coming in like every other week, every weekend, things like that are coming back, and they're bringing all this material, all these tools. They've got like already kits pretty much cut out.
Yeah.
To just put them together real quick, and I'm like, I've tried to tell them like people are not going to be able to live in these, and it's like maybe one person could live in there.
Yeah.
And it's not living.
Better than a tent. I mean,
it is better than a tent for sure.
Bureaucrats are going to bureaucrat, but they should also be able to be human beings. When you become so wedded to the mission of building inspections and you can't stop and look and say, wait a minute. Yes, Christians are to follow the law. We're to follow the authorities. But you can't step back and see how utterly Pharisaian this is. That, look, I get it, you're cold. I get it, tents are not going to keep you warm. I get it that you're wet. I get it that your family's afraid. But no, you cannot go sleep in that shack because you might get hurt because there's an electrical outlet in there. It's Pharisaian and then some. And Jesus may well look at these people and say, I see your job. I see what it's to do. But do you think you could supply some mercy? Remember this. He who gives mercy will receive it. People should reflect upon that. Just another example, this from the federal level. The federal government, this according to the Daily Caller's exclusive piece, the people who run Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are spending millions of dollars to fund a project to advise same-sex attracted men on how to more safely engage in drug-fueled intercourse. This is an app called Chemsex. Your tax dollars paid for this to be created through groups like the University of Connecticut. Here from the Daily Caller. The University of Connecticut in July announced a 5-year, $3.4 million grant to the United States Institute of Health for Assistant Professor Roman Shrethra to develop his app, JomCare, a smartphone-based, just-in-time adaptive intervention aimed at improving access to HIV and substance abuse-related harm reduction services for Malaysian GBMSM, gay, bisexual, and other men who have sex with men, engage in chemsex. University News website Yukon Today reported. Chemsex, according to Northern Irish LGB so-called TQ plus nonprofit, the Rainbow Project, is the involvement of drugs in one's sex life. Typically involves methamphetamine, crystal meth, and mephedrone, meth, GHB, and GBL. Bureaucrats who want to limit your access to rainwater, who want to limit your access to raw milk, want to increase access to men having sex with men while being high, which reduces, of course, any form of inhibition, eventually, most of it right off the spot. See, bureaucrats are going to bureaucrat. In the case of the National Institute of Health, their bureaucracy has decided we need to have more men having more sex with more men on more and more drugs. What about mercy? Is it merciful to do this? No. The merciful thing is to help men avoid it. The Christian thing is to speak about avoiding it altogether. Insanely difficult, by the way. I mean, anyone who has a sex drive at all, same sex included, knows it can be insanely difficult, particularly when you're young and particularly when you're high or drunk. I think we can all relate to that.